Movie 3. Why? Why do people use social networking sites? In 2008, Adam Joinson looked at why people were using Facebook, asking them for their most common reasons of usage. And he came up with the Facebook Sevens, 7 core Facebook activities. The first one was that people reported they use it to connect with people, or to participate in group behaviour, both social functions. They reported using it to share media, again a kind of social function, or a more individualistic function to use applications such as games. They also used it to update their status, informing the world about their life, and to watch updates of others. So it's a kind of sharing and learning exercise. Surfing, or virtual people watching, was another kind of social function. And investigating people that they know in the real world, such as family and friends, to see what they're up to, what they're doing, what they're saying. A form of social surveillance. Joinson used uses and gratifications theory to explain the 7 core activities. The basic premise of this theory is that when an audience actively seeks out media, they are seeking out a specific need or use, whether that need is entertainment, to buy something, to socialise, for business purposes or for factual information, all with the aim of gratification, meeting that need. This idea emanated from work conducted first of all in the 1940s, later elaborated by Bulmer and Brown in 1972, who identified 4 primary needs for the uses of mass media, such as newspapers, radio, television, and telephone. They said people use media for diversion, to escape from routine and problems, as an emotional release, for personal relationship functions, for the social utility of information and conversation, or as a substitution of media for companionship, for personal identity or individual psychology, as a means of reinforcing their values or reassuring themselves on their own identity, or for moderating their identity on the basis of feedback, a kind of self-understanding exercise, and lastly for surveillance, information about factors which might affect one or will help one do or accomplish something. So that purpose is a kind of information garnering or gathering for a very functional needs purpose. The following year, Katz et al. Conducted a similar study, and they said that people's use of mass media was a means by which they could connect or disconnect themselves with others. They developed 35 needs taken from, admittedly, a largely speculative literature on the social and psychological functions of the mass media, and put them into 5 categories: cognitive needs, affective needs, personal integrative needs, social integrative needs, and tension release needs. So you can see from this that the categories that Katz et al. Came up with are very similar to the categories identified by Bulmer and Brown. Other approaches have suggested that the use of mass media, including social networking sites, is largely to do with social capital. That social network sites like Facebook can also be used to gain social capital. Social capital is a term which broadly refers to the resources accumulated through the relationships we have with other people. In 2008, Ellison et al. Suggested that Facebook is used to garner, to gain and manage social capital, that is, the power, privilege and possibilities we have by virtue of the social networks we are part of. These resources can take the form of useful information, personal relationships and the emotional benefits of those, or the capacity and experience of being in and organising groups. Social capital is related to psychological well-being, such as increased self-esteem and satisfaction with life. Putnam 2000 distinguished between two types of social capital though, bridging and bonding social capital. The former is linked to what network researchers refer to as weak ties, which are loose connections between individuals who may provide useful information or new perspectives for one another, but typically not emotional support. That's bridging capital. Alternatively, bonding social capital is found between individuals in tightly knit, emotionally close relationships, usually offline, real-world relationships such as family and friends, real-world friends. So researchers began to become interested in whether or not we can have any kind of emotional gains from the weak ties of people we meet online. They suspected, yes, we could, because anonymity, invisibility and disclosures that come because of that with weak ties lead to emotional gains. So the hypothesis of the Ellison et al. 2008 study was that intensity of Facebook use, and by intensity they mean not just the frequency of Facebook use, but also how connected you are with the application, how much you emotionally invest in it, will be positively associated with individuals' perceived bridging social capital and will positively affect life satisfaction and self-esteem. And they found that this was true. Here you can see that in individuals who were highly engaged with Facebook, who had high Facebook use intensity, even those with low life satisfaction found greater bridging social capital, found it to be far more useful than those with low life satisfaction but low Facebook intensity. And a similar kind of finding emerged regarding self-esteem. High intensity Facebook use in low self-esteem individuals led to increased bridging social capital. Facebook use didn't seem to have much of an effect on bridging social capital in terms of life satisfaction or self-esteem in those with high life satisfaction and high self-esteem. But there are many non-social capital explanations of Facebook use as well, and these emanate from mainstream psychological findings on things like conditioning, needs versus wants, and the self-concept. The term conditioning proposes that people's experiences are shaped by direct or indirect consequences or the feedback they receive as they go through their life. Conditioning then can help explain how our actions, such as using Facebook, are actually just ways to create a reaction from something or someone else. Instrumental conditioning occurs as the individual learns to perform behaviors that produce positive outcomes and avoid those behaviors that yield negative outcomes. So how can we apply this to Facebook use? Well, suppose you post a picture and you get lots of people clicking the thumbs up likes symbol. Or you inform the Facebook world of your status and people respond generally with interest or sympathy, adding comments on your wall. Or you request friendship of somebody you've come across on Facebook and they accept. All of the above have positive outcomes to your Facebook actions, and this kind of thing keeps you coming back for more. You're more likely to repeat a behavior if you get positive outcomes and avoid those with negative outcomes. But of course it doesn't always work out like that. Sometimes a user will leave a comment on their wall or post a picture and it receives no replies and no likes. This intermittent negative consequence actually, quite paradoxically, encourages return visits to Facebook and return Facebook activity in order to recruit a positive outcome next time. These sometimes you win, sometimes you lose situations, known as partial reinforcement or intermittent variable response schedules, are very potent sources of influence on our behavior. We can also use needs versus wants explanations from psychology to explain Facebook activity. Psychogenic needs are those needs that reflect the priorities of a culture and include the need for status, power and affiliation. Now, we normally use consumable items such as designer label, perfumes or clothes, etc. to fulfill these types of needs. But the affiliations or friends we form on social network sites such as Facebook and the status or power we gain from lots of connections fulfills another psychogenic need. Alternatively, we have hedonic needs. These are needs for excitement, self-confidence or fantasy, perhaps to escape the mundane or routine aspects of life. And certainly, and the social network connections that you make on it, Facebook, can meet these hedonic needs. An alternative explanation is that Facebook can act as a form of online self-presentation or self-monitoring and audience interaction. The looking glass self explanation. According to Cooley, we see ourselves through the eyes of others, or at least we try hard to. Or, more precisely, we see ourselves through the eyes of whomever we've received responses or feedback from in the recent past. So you could argue that once you've been on Facebook and received some responses from people who've read your posts or seen your pictures, the user sees himself at least partially through the imagined eyes of his audience, those same people who left comments or on his wall. And in some way he feels answerable to his audience. Once one has had a taste of externalizing one's thoughts in this way, and imagining that others care to read your posts, to think about them, to ponder them, and to voice a reply to them, thinking that is not externalized seems kind of pointless. Perhaps like singing in the shower after performing in front of a large audience. In other words, this explanation proposes that one acquires the cognitive habit of thinking and experiencing on behalf of an audience and their satisfaction. So you're kind of singing to the gallery all the time, and when you're not articulating an idea or thought that is presented to an audience, it brings you low personal satisfaction. There are also narcissism explanations of Facebook use. The finding that we've just talked about in terms of audience satisfaction and gaining personal satisfaction from it might be better understood if we consider the noted relationship between Facebook use and the trait narcissism. In a 2008 study conducted by Baffardi and Campbell, there was a noted correlation between the number of Facebook friends one has, or wall posts a person had made, and the personality trait narcissism, a trait that is associated with an inflated view of oneself. This finding is supported by a study conducted in 2010 on college students who found a positive correlation between narcissistic traits and the number of times Facebook was checked per day, presumably in order to check whether or not one is getting any kind of positive feedback, and the amount of time spent on the site, presumably serving the same function, and also giving oneself time to interact with one's audience. The question is, though, are narcissists drawn to Facebook, or does Facebook cultivate embryonic narcissism? We also have explanations of Facebook use which are kind of prevalent across all kinds of computer media communication models. The idea that Facebook disinhibits people because you are anonymous and invisible, and allows you to do, say, and share things on Facebook that you wouldn't share, say, or do in face-to-face situations. You disclose more on Facebook. Certainly Nosko et al. Last year found that young, single people were particularly likely to disclose sensitive information about themselves, which they reported to be a cathartic experience. So this may be a motivation for using this social network site. Finally, a rather what most people might consider a paradoxical and unusual finding, that the truth is actually on our Facebook profiles. Strangely, people tend to be honest about themselves on Facebook. In a 2010 study, Back et al. Found that Facebook profiles generally reflected their owners' actual selves rather than their idealized selves. Perhaps we can use a looking-glass self-explanation for this, that people put their real selves out there to receive feedback on their actual selves. The next movie will look at the psychology of using a related social network site, a very popular one and increasingly so, Twitter.